Captain's Log, Subdate 200901.5. The ship has had a full purge overseen by the Scutters, and is now back up to 85% efficiency, which would have been higher had the Sith not depleted our energy reserves by abusing the holosuites and those Orion slave girls. I think I've just realised I've gotten to a stage where I don't entirely remember how to introduce myself and a video that is not part of a series, like tomorrow's Halls of Injustice, then Thursday's Exhibition of Stupid People, and Friday's Twat. I guess we'll go with the title. Right-wing comedy. It's a thing, yes, don't joke. I'm not going to. I'm not very good at it. But we're going to talk about it because it was trending on Twitter, along with many other individuals and establishments. It all comes about because of this column by Bill Gardner. The new Director General of the BBC has threatened to axe left-wing BBC comedy. What is left-wing BBC comedy? If anyone pays attention to the BBC, and you really think about it, most of it is. Some have said it's more centrist. I would beg to differ, as someone that sits on the fence quite a lot, for personal enjoyment of course. No, I'm not a right-wing delusional, paranoid, F-wit right-winger. Thank you to, what's your name? I can't remember, but you troll me on Twitter every so often. I can't remember your name. DM Lamont, that's who you are. Hi. I remembered. Yeah. I can safely tell you, though, as someone that sits more close to the centre, that the BBC is not, when it comes to their comedy shows, centrist. They are definitely more left-leaning, and a lot of the comedians they get on panel shows are more progressive. You have more chance of seeing a right-wing comedian who is exclusively known for the niche of being a right-wing comedian on a show like Question Time, where they are then summarily pummeled for daring to differ from the MPs who can't take a joke in the first place. We know this. We really do. Can't believe I'm talking about the BBC and I've yet to give a... Oh, hang on, I can do this properly. Let me just get my newly received kalimba. Public service announcement, defund the BBC. Back to this column though, because it is quite interesting. The BBC's new Director General is planning to tackle perceived left-wing bias in the corporation's comedy shows the Daily Telegraph can disclose. So one of the things many people talk about when it comes to the BBC is their bias. I don't watch the BBC because of how utterly biased they are. Their political coverage is insane. In fact, the only thing I've ever watched of theirs more recently, that I sometimes watch when I'm feeling a little bit depressed, is the 10-hour Brexit referendum night. Because much like when Trump got elected and you saw people get steadily more and more upset, the Young Turks coverage was iconic. The Brexit referendum, oh dear Lord, people got very, very salty. But one of the other reasons I watch it is because it's one of the very few times they had an even dispersal of left-wing and right-wing politicians to discuss the evening. It was satisfying. But for the most part, no, the BBC is very biased, and that is a problem when it comes to standards, rules. The BBC itself is meant to be impartial, and yet they give a majority platform to more left-wing ideas. Now that there is a right-wing government in office, this has been challenged. Tim Davie believes the BBC's comedy output is seen as too one-sided and needs a radical overhaul in the coming months. This comes from senior sources at the BBC, and the BBC has long faced accusations its comedy shows on radio and television are unfairly biased against the Tories, Donald Trump and Brexit, which is true. When Brexit happened and the people voted to leave, Mock the Week only had comedians that were predominantly anti-Brexit, who then just took the opportunity to espouse their own ideas about Brexit and how stupid the British were, which, by the way, was really awkward at the best of times because they were that one comedian that everyone felt awkward around. Prior to that, it was Frankie Boyle because you weren't sure what he was going to say next, and he's a millionaire socialist. Right. Yes. Precious. In his first speech as Director General on Thursday, Tim Davie will set out plans to restore trust and confidence in the BBC by better reflecting all sides of the political divide. Part of the measures could see a number of shows axed, but the BBC has stressed that no decisions had yet been made, adding that Tim Davie would only set out a direction of travel in his speech. However, it is expected that some of the worst offending shows will be taken off the schedules in the longer term. As well as cancelling shows altogether, BBC programme makers will be expected to find a better balance of satirical targets rather than constantly aiming jokes at the Tories. Meanwhile, comedy panel shows will be told to book guests with a wider range of views on issues such as Brexit. There is also concern that too many BBC comedy shows promote a metropolitan, London-centric and left-wing view of the world. And that got utterly annihilated at Brexit, didn't it? London predominantly voted for Remain. Yes, understandably, Conservative MPs have welcomed this drive to make the BBC more impartial. And I'm sure many people support that. Others have taken the stance that the reason right-wing comedy isn't as popular or seen on TV is because, and to quote Owen Jones here, is because it just isn't funny. It's a victim of market forces, which is a rather interesting turn of phrase, don't you think? A victim of market forces on a channel that is paid for by the taxpayer and therefore is not subject to the market. What you meant to say is right-wing comedy, as is more commonly known as the umbrella term, and then we'll insert a few comedians that were trending in a moment, is a victim of censorship. Market forces equals censorship if we are talking about it in the context of a channel that exists and is paid for via a TV license. You absolute melt, Owen Jones. When in that column it was alluded to that some shows might get cancelled, many people on Twitter got excited. They got excited because finally Mrs. Brown's Boys would stop doing reruns. Because in the UK we only do comedy seasons or shows for 6 episodes. If a show is only run for 5 series, that's only 30 episodes. Or 1 season and a bit in the US. Can we please do longer seasons of shows? It's honestly getting on my nerves. If you think about it, Red Dwarf had 8 seasons, let's ignore everything after for a bit. 6 episodes apiece. That's not very long. Do more. You suck. Red Dwarf is great though. The BBC's idea of comedy is not. Oh, and I'll do it again just for the sake of it. Public service announcement. Defund the BBC. Some of the comedians that were trending because of this would include Jim Davidson, who is a renowned conservative. His humour is very interesting, but he was incredibly popular during the 80s and 90s. Others include Roy Chubby Brown, who's very much an insult comedian. Both of those two people hold very strong views when it comes to things like Islam and immigration. Adding to that, you'd have Nish Kumar and Frankie Boyle, who are both very left-wing comedians. I feel like now would be a good time to point out that when it comes to whether or not a type of comedy is funny or not, obviously does depend on the audience. And there's always an audience for left or right-wing comedy. That will never change. But over the years of political correctness and overly sensitive audiences and, of course, Karens, comedy has, within its window of what is and is not acceptable, been eroded at. That window has gotten so small it is essentially the size of your little fingernail, which is not a good thing when people say the only thing you can joke about is... Hang on, let me just open my book here. Oh, I've got a blank page. Very well, I guess comedy isn't as available as it once was, because then there comes a time when comedy itself, and it has happened before, will fall into the various areas of hate speech. It is a dangerous thing to do, and the BBC need to be above this. They need to be neutral, or they have to give an equal platform to comedy that is not the same as what they typically show, and let the audience decide for themselves instead of force-feeding Mrs. Brown's Boys on loop because you haven't had an original idea in a decade. With what we've discussed here, I would love to know what you think, so please do let me know in the comments down below. If I don't see you on Twitch tonight for fishing, I hope you'll have a fantastic Tuesday, and thank you all for listening.